I'm going to call the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor and Economic Opportunity to order, and I want to apologize to all of those that came and were here on time. Our Full Appropriations Committee went over today, and so some of us are still on their way over. So, but we want to get started because we don't want to cut things too short. So, I first am going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Chair Jenkins-Arno.
Here.
Representatives Robinson.
Here.
And Burkham. Habit.
Here.
And Martis.
Here.
And Chair, majority of present members are present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Representative Robinson moves to approve the minutes of the April 23rd meeting. There be no objections. The minutes are approved. I just want to welcome everybody here. Thanks. I'm going to skip the introductory remarks just because we want to get right into what we have to do. So I am going to welcome Jayshana Hicks, who's the Director of Legislative Affairs at LEO, and Stephanie Beckhorn, who's the Deputy Director of Employment and Training at LEO, for a presentation on Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for having us today. We appreciate the opportunity to present again. As you are aware, last month, Deputy Director Stephanie Beckhorn was here to present on LEO's workforce development initiatives and highlighting the governor's FY26 budget recommendations that would help continue that work. And so this week she is here to talk about the Michigan Rehabilitation Services and MRS's role in supporting Michigan's skilled workforce. So without further ado, I will kick it over to Stephanie.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you very much. You can go to the next slide. As Jayshana said, I was here about a month ago, so I will keep this first slide or two really high level. But as a reminder, we are here from the Office of Employment and Training, one of multiple areas within the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. As a quick reminder, we are composed of the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, Workforce Development, and our operations team. You can go to the next one. For the purpose of today's presentation, I would like to focus on Michigan Rehabilitation Services, or MRS, and their budget. MRS operates under the authority of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. The state's vocational rehabilitation programs is administered by the Rehabilitation Service Agency, which is part of the U.S. Department of Education. The VR program, or Vocational Rehabilitation Program, is designed to provide rehabilitation services for individuals with disabilities consistent with their strengths, resources, priorities, abilities, capabilities, interest, and informed choice. And I think it's very important to make that statement about the services that we provide. This is very much customized to the individual, all with the goal of helping individuals prepare for and engage in competitive integrated employment. Eligible individuals are those who have a physical or mental impairment that results in a substantial impediment to employment. I also want to highlight that in addition to our vocational rehabilitation services, we also operate the Michigan Career and Technical Institute. This is an educational campus designed for adults with disabilities, and we provide occupational and trade training and credentials in 11 professional trades. The campus is located in Plainwell, and last complete year served almost 500 students who received those services, those credentials, and then go on to employment throughout the state. You can go to the next one. As we move into the next part of the presentation, I would like to highlight Michigan Rehabilitation Services' current or fiscal year 25 budget. Our total budget for the current fiscal year is $130 million. MRS's federal funding source is considered a formula grant. So this is a federal grant at the U.S. Department of Education that is based on a formula. It does go out to all 50 states. I wanted to highlight here, similar to the other programs in employment and training, we are heavily dependent on those federal funding sources. Almost 79% of our budget, that is over $102 million, is from the federal government. But the VR program is a little unique in compared to other workforce development programs. The VR program requires that there to be a federal and state partnership. When the federal government identifies through the formula Michigan's award, in order for us to draw down that award, we have to provide general fund, not federal fund, resources to draw that down. The formula, federal formula, is that for every 21% of state funding that is identified, we are allowed to draw down 78.7 of federal funds. So that's a 4-to-1 match. If we want to simplify the math, for every dollar we put in state funding, we can draw down $4 from the federal government. Match is made up of a couple, so that big bulk of that 78% are the federal. Match, you will see there's general funds here through state appropriations, through the work that you do, and we thank you for that. We also get third-party cooperative agreements where we're able to tap in to groups in the community who are using their funding, non-federal, providing services that is, if it's allowable and eligible, we are able to take credit for those and help get that match dollars. We also have interagency cash transfer agreements. We actually have some of the largest amount of cash transfer agreements in the country. Those are, majority are through intermediate school districts. So if a school is providing services for an individual and it's state funded, not federal, we can get some of that money, draw down match, and then infuse those dollars, the federal $4 that we're bringing in, back into the school district to help support students. And then we have private contributions through philanthropic groups and other entities who have a shared passion or focus on individuals with disabilities. We serve a dual customer, much like our other workforce development programs. That is both businesses or employers and individuals. And when we talk about individuals, we break them down into two groups, adults and students. Our students are age 14 to 26. That's a defined eligibility for our program. And I want to highlight a really important fact. Through current labor market data, there are 1.3 million individuals with disabilities in our state. That represents 1 in 5 individuals. So 1 in 5 individuals in our state have a disability. I will say that number is probably underrepresented because although we work really hard, there is still a stigma attached to identifying yourself as an individual with a disability. So while we have those figures, like I said, I think they're a little underrepresented, but 1 in 5 is still a significant number of Michiganders who face a disability. That is why the work that we do in Michigan is so incredibly important. I want to provide you just a couple other key stats. Individuals with disabilities in Michigan have an unemployment rate of 15%. That is compared to the overall state's unemployment rate currently of 5.5%. So almost 3 times as high when it comes to unemployment. And then on the flip side with employment, we unfortunately see similar as well. Individuals with disabilities have an employment rate of 37%. And other general population of Michigan have an employment rate of almost 76%. So this work is incredibly important when you think about those statistics and you think about the fact that Michigan ranks 32nd in the nation in labor force participation. That means we have individuals sitting outside of the sidelines that we're working to bring into the employment space to help employers have access to a talented pool of individuals to hire. And so this work is incredibly important. So you can go to the next one. So what services are we providing as part of Michigan Rehabilitation Services? Again, we meet individuals where they're at. These services are customized. It will really depend on the individual and their employment plan, their goals, the barriers that they are trying to overcome. We provide assessments, helping do career exploration and planning. We do guidance and counseling. We do disability management. That is done through counseling and therapy, treatment, assisted devices. We, of course, do training to help individuals meet that employment goal that they have, remove those barriers, and make sure they have the skills that employers need. We do job search assistance so that once they get through the training and all of the support that they need, that they get job attached. And then we do benefit counseling, which is incredibly important because really understanding how employment, how the resources will affect not only their federal, but also their state benefits. We take a two-pronged approach, so talking about those two individuals, I told you adults and students. Starting with the students, we take a twofold approach with eligible students. The first is our pre-employment transition services. We like our acronyms, so I'll refer to that as PREETs. These are designed to be an early start in job exploration and are delivered in collaboration with the education and community partners. There's 5 pillars. Really important. First thing is to provide instruction for self-advocacy. That really gets back to that underrepresented number, that self-advocacy as an individual with a disability, how to stand up and support for yourself, what to ask for, resources that you may be eligible for. So that is incredibly important. Job exploration, counseling, work readiness, work-based learning experience, and counseling on post-secondary education, helping these individuals see themselves completing high school and going on into post-secondary education, which could be a 2-year, could be 4-year. We have some innovative registered apprenticeship that our workforce development team is working with our Michigan Rehabilitation Service, first in the nation, couple registered apprenticeship programs that we're super proud of. The next layer of services that students can receive is the individualized voc rehab services. This is really that next step, more focused, targeted job and career interest search. These individuals work to get that individualized plan for employment and really to help that individual with the supports, with the services they need to get and keep the job. Another our second dual customer that we work very closely with are employers, businesses throughout the state to help them understand the benefits of hiring individuals with disabilities. And there are many benefits to hiring those. We provide guidance on reasonable accommodation, on assisted technology, and we work to dispel the myths about the capabilities of individuals with disabilities. The services that we provide to businesses serve as a pipeline of qualified candidates for Michigan businesses, helping the business reduce their recruitment cost and time to hire. And I think it's important to flag this is not only for new hires or new individuals that come into the business. We see many scenarios where an employer or business will come to us and it's an existing worker who's worked there for 20 years, but maybe their eyesight is not as good and their productivity, they're challenged with a software system, or they've done a manual or an automated machine, but they're getting hurt and they're having challenges with productivity. So it is both on the new hire, but it's also for existing workers. Again, keeping individuals employed is certainly a key component of our job. I want to talk a little bit about the investment that you make with the dollars and how they are paying off here in the state. Last year, we served almost 33,000 individuals with disabilities. We helped them earn industry-recognized credentials. We helped the individuals get trained, and we helped individuals get employed. This is a continuing number. Year over year. Some individuals stay with us for a few months. Some individuals may stay with us over a year, and while they're not employed today, we may see that next month, the following month. So these are ongoing numbers, and really proud to say that we've worked with almost 6,800 businesses throughout the state. Again, helping them expand their talent pool and have access to these customers. Okay. Next part, we'll talk a little bit about the governor's executive recommendations for fiscal year 2026 and what we would look to do with this support. The first is pre-employment transition services for students. So that's the PREETs that I previously talked about. Again, just as a quick reminder, work-based learning, job exploration, counseling, training, self-advocacy, and counseling on post-secondary opportunities. We provide these services in either a group or an individual setting, depending on the individual. As a result, pre-employment services are provided in addition to our traditional VR services. So every student with a disability is eligible to receive pre-employment services regardless if they are an MRS customer. So I think that is really important. This could be their first or entry into services to help support their barrier removal, help support accommodations that they need onto getting that job. The increased funding would allow our program to target individuals more intently, where we would be focusing on counties with special consideration given to those with above average unemployment rates, below average graduation rates, and individuals living in poverty. We would provide the needed resources to help increase opportunities for full-time employment and credential attainment. These funding would allow MRS to serve 25% more individuals with disabilities, more students. This equates to almost 8,000 additional individuals. And we would expect to see a 10% increase in customers who achieve a credential and obtain full-time employment. Would like to share a quick story about Riley Strouch, who's from Clinton Township in Macomb County. He had received pre-employment services, pre-employment transition services from MRS, including job exploration and soft skills. However, after graduation, Riley and his family were concerned about next steps. He did have employment, but not at the hours that he wanted. It was part-time employment, and it was not supporting his goal of financial independence. So we provided Riley with a range of services to help him gain his independence. First step was to get him into a full-time job. That is what he would like to do, and so we worked with him to refine his resume, to refer him for job readiness, and to help him with interviews and job placement. Independence was incredibly important to Riley, so we helped him with that goal. He participated in our mobility training. This helped him learn how to use the smart bus transportation system, which gives him the freedom to travel independently to work and to other locations without having to rely on others. After completing the pre-employment transition services, Riley has successfully secured a new job at a retail store. This job provides more hours and offers an increase in pay. I just want to highlight right there at the bottom, as a reminder, although we are asking for $8.4 million in GF funds, because of the federal match, that $8.4 million would allow us to draw down $32 million. So that is why you see the $40.4 million. The second governor executive recommendation includes support for MRS's role in serving the skilled workforce. So this is the traditional vocational rehabilitation programs. Again, so incredibly important. As I mentioned previously, there's over 1.3 million individuals in the state of Michigan with a disability, that 1 in 5, probably almost 1 in 4. We've served 33,000 last year. We're very proud of that number. But we're number 1 in the nation. You saw there on employment and wages. But when there's 1.3 million, we know that there's more work to be done. We want to move the needle on that 32nd in the nation in our labor force participation. So this investment would help support additional individuals. And not only is it drawing down that $32 million, but the long-term investment is significant. Individuals with disabilities who we help get employed become taxpayers, consumers, and contributors to the local economy. Studies from Michigan State University have shown that for every dollar invested in vocational rehabilitation services can yield $2.17 in economic benefits through reduced public assistance cost and increased tax revenue. One quick story on our other dual customer that we serve is our employer, DeWeiss Manufacturing. They have benefited from our support in developing a pipeline. They have been a business partner with Michigan Rehab Services for over 5 years, and we're one of the first businesses to participate in our MRS Graduation to Work program. Cameron McKee graduated from our machine technology program at the Michigan Career and Technical Institute. That's our campus in Plainwell. He was connected to a local business relations consultant at MRS, and they worked together to help facilitate a work experience at DeWeiss. Over the years, DeWeiss has supported people with disabilities in their community. They participate in our hiring events. They offer mock interviews for MRS participants. And when they learned about the Graduation to Work program, they opened their facility to a tour for Cameron. He was able to observe and get a better understanding about the environment, what the expectations are as a worker for the company, and as that began working for them and has become an incredibly valuable employee for the company. As a quick reminder, in the corner there, this executive recommendation for $2 million, because of the federal match requirements, would allow us to draw down $7 million, just over $7 million. So that would be $9.2 million. When we add up the two slides, the $2 million on this slide and the approximately $8.4 million. That's a little bit over $10 million. Why that number is significant is currently we do receive almost $23 million in GF dollars. That allows us to draw down $90 million. We, without additional dollars, will not be able to draw down the whole federal award from the U.S. Department of Education if we don't have an appropriate amount of match, and that equates to about $10 million. What would happen then is Michigan's share of the pie that the formula said would come to us goes back at the federal level, and it would be awarded to other states who have the match available. So just wanted to flag that. These dollars would help us serve additional customers and would allow our counselors to focus on that work and not go out and look and try to get away from Mission Central, which is really serving those individuals if we had those dollars. I thank you very much for your time today and would love to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the work that you're doing with this population. It's so important. I was just wondering, how many, you have regional offices around the state? Just wondered how many you have and kind of what they're specifically that they do.
So we have staff located throughout the state, to meet employers and job seekers where they're at. We use the opportunity to co-locate. We are located with our Michigan Works agencies. We are in some county offices, so they're not just we're located in a community setting to help them. And that's where our vocational rehabilitation counselors are. That's where our rehab coordinators are. So they're the ones meeting with businesses, and they're the ones meeting with customers to provide all of the services that were on the slide.
Okay. And I know, like in Lenawee County, like the Goodwill, say, they have a very strong, workforce development, I guess, department for this population. And I just wondered, do you work with them, or do you see that as kind of like an overlap for?
Absolutely not an overlap. We see them as a partner, and in some situations, Goodwill Industries will be subcontracted for some of our other workforce development work. The need is significant. As I mentioned, we can't service, with that population of 1.3 million, we can't service every individual, and so not in competition. We share a shared goal, and I would feel very confident that they would sit here and say, we want to help individuals get employed. We want to help businesses have access to that talent.
Okay, very good. Rep. Van Workum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess trying to get a basic understanding of this. You've thrown out the number 1.3 million with disabilities, 1 every 5 Michigan residents, and then you say 15% with disabilities are unemployed, and then I see your slide of you've helped 33,000 people. So it seems like using disability in a very broad term when you're saying how much people looking to serve, but in actuality, what are the disabilities that people with disabilities that are you actually serving? I see, blind. I think we all have a mental image of those that we want to be helping and see successful, but I think the term disability in the use when you come up with the bigger number is probably something of a broader term compared to what your actual mission is and who you are trying to help.
Yeah, so Bureau of Services for Blind Persons certainly has that mission for that specific individuals that are low vision or blind. MRS is focused on the broader, and you're right, are disabilities you can see, but not all disabilities are visible. It could be, we traditionally would see the physical disabilities. There's mental, cognitive. I will tell you, autism is probably the largest growing area of an individual with a disability that we serve, helping those individuals. So the population, again, that we're trying to reach is that disability that is the broadest term. I want to make sure I'm answering your question as far as the actual.
Well,
are you looking for specific types of disability?
Well, kinda. If you're saying that there's 1.3 million Michiganders with a disability and believe that's an actual undersell of what it is, you're serving 33,000 people. I mean, where does that focus go? Where is the ability to actually have an impact if you're trying to use a very broad term? We all know that dollars are finite. So if you're doing this broad term, are you really helping if you're trying to service everyone, right? You can only be stretched so thin to be effective. So is there an actual path here, an actual population that we should be focusing on? You mentioned autism, and that's a growing concern. As chair of the DHHS Medicaid budget, that's something I deal with on a daily basis. So where you can't be everything for everyone, right? So if you're doing the broad, so where do you think the focus should be, or where is the current focus?
Yes, the current focus is twofold. We don't want to be the best kept secret. So that 1.3 million, they unfortunately all of them don't know that we exist. So we're doing outreach engagement, wanting them to come in. But our focus is for the individuals that we can engage with and that want to be employed. At the end of the day, we want individuals to be employed. Some individuals with disabilities, and my friend here will come up later, like they want to just maintain independence. They just want to live in their house. Like, don't make me go into assisted living. I want to be able to go to the grocery store. I want to go to the library. I want to meet with my friends. So again, that customized service, but we are focused on individuals that we come in contact with that want employment. If they're a youth, we want them to complete secondary school. We want them to go on to post-secondary school, but we're really focused on the employment aspect for individuals with disabilities, and not every individual with a disability wants employment. And so we're really customized to that person that walks in that says, I just want to stay in my house. Like, I've been here for 30 years. I want to stay here. Other people say, it is hard for me to continue to work. Is there some technology or some assistance you can help my employer and me solve the problem so that I can continue to work? Some is autism, and it's individuals to say, how can we help? These are master level counselors that work for MRS. That's the majority of our staff, to sit with that individual with an autism and say, what's a plan? What do you need to succeed? But at the end of the day, Representative, we are focused on helping individuals get into employment and keep employment.
Rep. Martis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both for being here. And if I don't have a question for the second presentation, just want to shout out the Disability Network for being here today. So, I had a friend of mine who is hard of hearing who really opened my eyes to the disability community, where she said that a lot of times when we talk about diversity, the community that is not included is the disabled community, and that's kind of shaped the way that our office has tried to be of service. And I'm curious you talked about a lot of federal dollars, a lot of federal grants, collaboration with the Department of Education. I know that if the federal government takes efforts to abolish the Department of Education, they've said maybe programs will be serviced in other departments. I'm curious how your interactions have been with the federal government, if that happens. And then at a second level, there's talks of a lot of grants being canceled, funding being pulled. Is that a concern of you, and have you yet been impacted?
Okay. Great questions. That's something that keeping us busy and, quite frankly, probably keeping me up at night a little bit. First, I'm happy to say at the Rehabilitation Service Agency, so RSA, we have not seen the significant reduction in cuts there in their staff. I have seen it in adult ed, in our registered apprenticeship programs, and in our employment and training programs. So we still have a core staff that we've been working with, so that is good. What happens with the Department of Education and what could it potentially move, we're watching that. We know there's been some talk nationally about does RSA, if something happens to education, does it go to Health and Human Services? Potentially. Could it go to Department of Labor? As I mentioned, this program is under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. The other titles of that program, the key titles, are under Department of Labor, and Department of Labor has an Office of Disability. So that might be one place that it lands. To your second question, I'm always concerned about federal funding, but I will say this program is a federal law. So I will say it's a federal law. We have funding that has been obligated. We are just receiving our news about our next award that's coming up, so I think that's all positive. So this isn't a grant or a contract. Like it is a federal law that Congress has appropriated these dollars, and so that's what, as I tell my team, who are very rightfully so, very nervous, I say we do the same job today that we did yesterday. We continue to serve individuals with disabilities.
Rep. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to ask a follow-up to Representative Van Workum. And he raised some interesting questions and some answers I was very curious about. Not necessarily just dealing with autism, because as far as autism, there's different spectrums of individuals.
Absolutely.
And obviously, this is a situation where one size does not fit all. Could you talk to me, like on a ground level, what that looks like, how you deal with someone with maybe who has autism, as opposed to somebody who's, really autistic? How does that look like in real time?
Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, I'm going to have Sigrid Adams come up, who is the director of Michigan Rehabilitation Services. I will say, Representative, I appreciate that you say, yeah, it's very customized, and not all autism is the same. There are diagnoses that do occur on a spectrum. So I would just, before I turn it over to her, to say it's very much going to be very customized, not only for the disability that the individual has, but the employment plan that the individual has. So we start with those two items, but specific services.
Sure. And thank you for that question. So what we look at are the functional limitations that occur as a result of a disability. And those can vary amongst individuals as well. So for example, diabetes is a very common diagnosis, and we serve individuals with that particular condition. There are some individuals on the spectrum where diabetes is controlled through insulin or even in the form of pills. Other individuals have experienced far more functional limitations, so they've lost their legs or they're losing their vision. So we tailor our services based on those resulting functional limitations that occur as a result of the disability. We serve individuals with fibromyalgia, heart disease, deaf and hard of hearing, the full range, as long as that disability presents a substantial impediment to employment and the individuals want to work. Doesn't even matter what the disability is. We address those services specific to their individual needs.
Ask a follow-up, Chair? Yeah. To that point, so you say it's an individual thing, but is there templates on how to deal with certain situations? Is there training involved? Because again, you could be dealing with things that you've never seen before. How does that work?
Absolutely. So that's part of the reason why we hire individuals or counselors with master's degrees, training. So they've had far more extensive training as compared to, say, a counselor who has the bachelor's level degree. And we also onboard new counselors to help them understand the full range of disabilities and the full range of challenges that our customers face. So training is a critical part of our program. It never ends because we all need to expand our horizons as new conditions are diagnosed or new treatment forms emerge that address certain conditions as well. So ongoing training, higher educated individuals who can provide these services, and then just always expanding our knowledge around the world of disability and what individuals face in terms of their disability posing a barrier to employment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just to kind of clarify, how do you determine what is a substantial barrier to being able to work?
So we rely on medical documentation as well as information that the individual provides us. So part of the eligibility criteria is that a person has a disability, that a disability poses a significant impediment to employment, and they want to go to work. So medical information, whether it's psychological, neuropsychological, helps inform whether or not that's a significant disability and barrier to employment.
Okay, thank you. I think we're good. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Next up, we have Terry Langley, who's the Executive Director of Disability Network of Michigan. And she's going to do a presentation on Centers for Independent Living. So thanks for being here, Terry.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you today and talk about Centers for Independent Living in our state. As you said, Madam Chair, my name is Terry Langley, and I'm the Executive Director for Disability Network Michigan. Centers for Independent Living are, they're created under the Federal Rehab Act of 1973. They are non-residential, consumer-driven, community-based disability organizations, and they promote independence and self-determination for people with disabilities. And what that all means is that they're consumer-driven because they're required by federal law to have individuals with disabilities make up more than half of the center's employees. And they must be in decision-making positions, meaning they're not interns and they're not receptionists. They are supervisors and managerial positions. Community-based because staff and board members live and work in the communities that the centers serve. And there are over 300 employees combined between all 15 centers. And as you can see by the map, there are 15 centers that cover all 83 counties. So I hesitate to mention this because of the conversation from the previous presenter. According to the Centers for Disease Control, there are 2.1 million, or 1 in 4 adults in Michigan who live with a disability. And as Stephanie mentioned, the number varies because of the stigma that's attached to identifying with a disability, and the number varies depending on who's collecting that data. So when you're talking about Centers for Disease Control, they're pulling data from, medical offices, medical diagnoses, and that's where the number tends to be a lot larger. A disability can be temporary or permanent and can have been diagnosed at birth or acquired during one's life. Disability is part of the overall human experience. Because of this, it's critical that those who work at the centers have lived experience. Our employees understand the needs of those they serve because they have navigated similar paths. This shared experience also builds trust and connections, providing someone with a disability the support they need to advocate for themselves. Our center's employees also understand the critical need of self-determination. We practice person-centered initiatives, my life, my way. I'm getting ahead of myself. All Centers for Independent Living are required to provide 5 core services. They include peer support and mentoring. Centers provide classes to encourage people with disabilities to share their experiences and help each other navigate any barriers they may be facing. Disability Network West Michigan and Muskegon, for example, hosts a peer group for veterans with disabilities to offer an opportunity for connection and continuation of the unique bond experienced by those who have served our country. Information and referrals and other core service. Staff helps someone in search of a service or information by providing options in the community to address the need. So when someone contacts one of the centers and has a question about where to go for disability services, we have staff on hand that can direct that person, whether it's somewhere in our center itself or somewhere else in the community. We have many community partners that we connect to. Individual and systems advocacy centers also work with businesses and governments to make them more accessible to people with disabilities. Independent living skills, this includes cooking, cleaning, managing money, how to use the community transportation system, etc. Disability Network Northern Michigan in Traverse City has someone on staff who is a trained chef. He leads adapted cooking classes, which includes a focus on healthy eating as well as safe cooking practices. In transition to community-based living, centers work with individuals making the transition from high school to college, post-secondary training and employment, as well as preparation for independent living. Disability Advocates of Kent County, located in Grand Rapids, works with community businesses to hold mock interviews for youth with disabilities in preparation for their next step after completing high school. Community transition services also include working with people to get them out of nursing facilities when they don't need to be there. Sometimes people have a temporary disability or even a permanent disability that doesn't require the level of care that a nursing facility has, but because they think that there are no other options, or their family thinks that there's no other options, they end up in nursing facilities, and our centers help to remove those folks and bring them back home. So here's where I was specifically asked to point to in my presentation today. Centers receive funding from three main sources. They receive grants and contracts from the federal government. They receive state funds approved by the legislature and the governor through the general fund. And they also receive gifts, donations from community partners and individuals. These gifts vary depending on the relationships that people build in their communities. For instance, our center in Grand Rapids has Steelcase and many of the other or corporations in their backyard that are generous with their philanthropy. We also have other centers in Southeast Michigan that have similar relationships. And they also have fees for services. So, some centers will go and assess a building for accessibility, and they'll charge that municipality for a review, which is a recommendation. It's not an enforcement. We like to tell people that we're not contacting the federal government for ADA violations. We're just trying to help you become more accessible so that someone doesn't bring a lawsuit against you for being inaccessible. The state approved a $19.7 million investment and a one-time appropriation of $1 million for fiscal year 2025. Many thanks to Representatives Van Werkum and Martis, who were here last session to approve that budget for us. Funding is distributed through the Michigan Rehabilitation Services Agency according to a formula based on the federally approved state plan of independent living. Every state has Centers for Independent Living, and every state has to approve a state plan for independent living, and that gets approved by the federal government, and it includes many things, including a formula for distribution of funds. Michigan is a little unique in that all 15 centers have combined together to approach the legislature and say, the funding that you approve for centers are going to be distributed among the 15 of us so that we don't come to each of you and pit you against each other and pit our centers against each other for the limited funds that exist in the state. The formula is 50% equity and 50% equality. The 50% equality is 60% population and 40% geography. So I'm giving you the numbers here. Last year, the state funding was about $12 million, and that included the $1 million, minus a $70,000 cut for the State Independent Living Council. Program income, which means Social Security income from the federal government that the state draws down, and then a placeholder from the Federal Rehab Act, and it amounts to $14.8 million. That was the total sum received by the centers last year out of the $19.7 million granted. So this figure is significant because the formula works one way and then we get our contracts from the state government, and the money is different. So since I started in 2021, I've asked several questions on why that is. To the best that I've been led is that the remaining amount is money that the legislature authorizes in federal grant funding. So if the state were to apply for federal grants during that fiscal year, they could apply up to about $5 million, and then you get the total of 19.7 and some change. To my knowledge, there haven't been in recent years any grants that have benefited the Centers for Independent Living directly. But again, we continue to work with the state to see if that possibility will change. Centers for Independent Living have always operated with transparency. Each year, the centers create a report and submit it to MRS. This report is shared with legislative leaders, including the chairs of the relative appropriation committees, the House and Senate fiscal agencies, and others. And it is included in the boilerplate language that's attached to the funding. In addition, each center lists their board members on their websites. So I bring that up because the Centers for Independent Living are very proud of the work that they do and the services they provide in their community, and the fact that they are transparent. Their books are open, they are audited by MRS and the state of Michigan. They have nothing to hide. The report for fiscal year 24 showed that SILs provide resources and services for people with all disabilities and for all ages. So you can see here that 39% of the people self-identified as having a physical disability, and 30% of those self-identified as having a cognitive disability. And the reason it's important to say self-identified is because, again, we don't ask. We have people come to our offices and our centers and request services, and through conversations, and through medical evidence, it's upon the person to share their journey with the staff of Centers for Independent Living. But everything that the Centers for Independent Living do is by self-identification, meaning that the person has to be a self-starter, the person has to want to receive services. We're not centers that force services or information on people that just aren't ready yet. And the majority of individuals with disabilities who receive services from our centers were age 25 or older. And if you remember, one of our core services is information and referral. Last year, we had over 76,000 individuals contact our centers throughout the state for information and services. The number of consumers served from last year was a little over 12,000. And I do argue that we are the best kept secret in your districts. There are not a lot of people that know about the centers and the services they provide, but hopefully with the work the center staff are doing with their outreach, that continues to change. We've seen a growth, and we're proud of that. Some of our partners at the state level include the Department of Natural Resources. Many of our centers work with DNR to assess their trailways and their beaches, and they do this to ensure people with disabilities can experience the recreational opportunities that help make up pure Michigan. Another partner is the Secretary of State. We work with the Bureau of Elections specifically to ensure accessibility for all voters. This includes partnering to have demonstrations on voting equipment, including the voter assist terminals, or VATs. We partner with the Michigan State Police as well. Centers work with the state police, specifically the Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, to ensure people with disabilities are prepared for emergencies. Centers work with individuals also to prepare emergency plans. And finally, a partnership that we are very proud of right now and working very diligently with is MISHDA. There's great work being done in housing, and we're appreciative of that partnership. The governor and legislature have prioritized affordable housing for Michiganians. I'd like to add that in addition to affordability, it is critical to recognize that the lack of accessible or adaptable housing is a main barrier to people with disabilities finding housing. One example was illustrated in 2022 in Lenawee County with the city of Adrian, an independent living community for people who are 62 and older or who are permanently disabled was condemned after a 6 to 9 inch gap between the floor and a wall was found in a third-floor apartment while carpet was being removed. The building's approximately 175 tenants were told to evacuate due to the unsafe conditions. Due to the lack of affordable and accessible housing in the area, many of the residents were relocated from their communities through no fault of their own. Disability Connections, serving Lenawee, Jackson, and Hillsdale counties, worked with some of the residents to identify accessible alternative housing options. We're all familiar with the famous phrase, "There's no place like home." We are all more comfortable in the place we call home, especially when it comes to recovering from an illness or an injury. While receiving care at home is often the preference for many of us, a disability may make it more challenging. Someone may need short or long-term modifications to their home, such as ramps to enter or grab bars in the shower to prevent further injury. SILS staff are trained and ready to assist individuals to achieve their goal of returning home, as well as helping make it safe. And these are just some examples that I've given where our centers have stepped up and helped individuals. A patient was ready to be discharged, and they couldn't be discharged from the hospital until their home was safe for them, which delayed their hospital stay, increasing the amount of money that was spent on care. And another example, when someone chooses hospice care and would rather live out their remaining days in their home, they have to make sure that their home is safe for them to live there, and our SILs have stepped up. Many SILs have loan closets where they can borrow wheelchairs, walkers, other mobility equipment. Sometimes SILs have people on vacation visiting, and they will have an injury. Pickleball is a huge sport right now where people are getting injured, and they can walk into the, or if they can walk, they can go to the center and borrow crutches for no fee. So this brings us to the fiscal year 26 funding request. As I stated earlier, Centers for Independent Living receive funding for mandated services from the federal government. Our network has also been recognized by the Michigan Legislature and Governor time and time again as a partner in providing valuable resources and services to the disability community. This recognition is evident each year with a dedicated line item funding in the budget. The governor has proposed the same investment as fiscal year 25. The line item includes $19.7 million in general funds for Centers for Independent Living. And I bring you back to the 1 in 4. Now, 1 in 4 doesn't mean that everybody with a disability is seeking services from our centers, but those who are, we are experiencing underserved areas. And Detroit, Oakland-Macomb, Mid-Michigan, Northern Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula are identified areas that have people who are underserved, meaning there are people with disabilities who want services, but our centers are at capacity with staff without the funds to add more staff to help with those individuals. The centers are requesting an additional $6 million in funding. These dollars, again, will be distributed through the formula I spoke of earlier, meaning each center would receive $200,000 equally, and the remaining $3 million would be divided up based on the 60-40 equality calculation. In 2019, a return on investment calculation was created and shared with the legislature at that time, and for every dollar the centers received, they saved the state $7. This savings was demonstrated by reducing the number of people on state assistance programs, including Medicaid expenses, which were reduced when people with disabilities were able to stay in their homes versus nursing home facilities. And the state's revenue increased when people with disabilities gained employment or maintained their employment and paid income taxes, spent money on entertainment and recreational activities. Right now, we're in the process of trying to calculate another more updated return on investment. And what we're seeing is that because the centers have a broad sweep of services, in order to provide the most correct return on investment, we need a little bit more work on that. In addition to helping people with disabilities directly, we also serve as resources for your offices. When constituents contact you seeking help, I definitely encourage you to refer them to the center that operates in your area. Many of you have met with your centers, you know the services they provide, and you know the value that they provide to your community. Staff is available to take those calls and walk someone through what sometimes can be a very overwhelming situation. It's our hope that the legislature, and specifically all of you, continue to recognize the value in this investment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for coming in and for your presentation. I'm sorry we really don't have time for questions because we were running late to begin with, but if anyone has questions, they're free to get in touch with you, I assume. So, okay, very good. So there being no further business before the subcommittee, the meeting is adjourned.